Hello, I'm Vervain. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to make a set of runes, and I'm going to make them out of this tree. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it first. So before I start, I just want to talk about some major design choices that I've already made and the reasons why I've chosen to make my runes in this particular way. So I decided that I wanted to make my runes out of wood just because I feel like that, well, I know that that's the traditional thing. If you read the 1st century account of Tacitus in Germania, section 10, he talks about the casting of the lots in the northern countries, and they would cut branches from a nut-bearing or a fruit-bearing tree and carve symbols upon them and cast them and choose 3 and yada yada yada. And so we know that they were cut from wood, and we know that they were cut from fruit-bearing trees. And I am deviating from tradition a little bit there because I'm cutting from a male juniper. The female junipers, which we have some over there, do bear berries, so they would be fruit-bearing trees. This is a male juniper that just has pollen, no berries, so it's not technically a fruit-bearing tree, but I have a specific relationship with this tree. Through this tree is kind of how I communicate a lot of the time with Odin. This tree has kind of been my representative of Odin on this property. And so I make my offerings to Odin to this tree typically, whether it's song or poetry or monthly blood offerings or tea or whatever it is, or mead. I tend to make them to this juniper tree, fondly known here in Austin as Texas cedar, of no relation to the cedar tree. So I think the fruit-bearing part is mostly important because it indicates that there's a certain amount of Ingu's energy, potential energy for life and to come out of that wood still. There's life still springing up from that wood, and you want to cut wood from the fruit-bearing tree before it bears fruit, so in the blossoming stage. And it's January right now. We're just slightly pre-pollen phase, the allergies are starting to happen, but they're not quite here yet, and you can kind of see the bud tips forming on the leaves. And I feel like this is actually the perfect time. It's also the perfect time in my research to be doing this. So we're gonna call that close enough. This tree is definitely still full of vital energy. If you're taking wood for mundane purposes, it's always nice to take wood that's already fallen or already dead. But if you have the permission of the tree and you're using wood for magical purposes, you're not going to kill the wood to take a branch. You're not going to kill the tree to take a branch. And there's so much more magic in living wood, I believe. I'm actually really excited for the scent of this wood to get all over my hands as I'm working with it, because it smells so good, so good. And just look at these little mushroom earrings just dangling. I didn't make these. Orly made these of shroomware, and I will link her down below because her earrings are just fabulous. And these are our little bowl beats, and she does amanitas and a bunch of other ones, and they make me so happy. But yeah, I think it is important to take living wood without harming the tree if you're using it for magical purposes. So that is what I will be doing. So I'm making them of wood. I'm not exactly making them of a fruit-bearing tree, but I think it's pretty close enough magically. I have a relationship with this tree that's important to me. It's 3, not 4. I will be cutting rune tines, not rune discs or tiles. So I will be cutting, rather than a branch and then cutting 24 nickel-sized slices and carving or burning or whatever the runes on the flat side, I'm going to cut thinner branches than I would for that and cut them into 1 or 2 inch long tines or twigs, and then shave a side off of each of them and carve the rune into that. I will also be carving my runes, not wood burning them. And we'll talk a little bit more about why I'll be doing that way when we get to that stage. And then I will be staining them with blood, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well at that point, and how I'm going to be finishing them and all the details and stuff as we move forward. For now, I've already talked this over with the tree and made my offerings, and I'm going to harvest the wood from the tree. I do want to say I am choosing to use only hand tools for this project. I won't be using any power tools, not just because I have no idea what I'm doing, but because it just feels like sacred work. And a lot of the rune authors that I've been reading have seemed to agree with this, that the process of making the runes, like making a super magical set of runes, is less about having something that's like perfect and beautiful and fancy, and more about having something that you really put yourself into. And like the blood is less about what it does for the runes and more about what it does for my connection to the runes. And the handsaw is less about like getting a finer cut than a chainsaw or whatever than it is about, I want to put more of my energy into this project rather than the energy of a chainsaw motor. This is also a Japanese pole saw as opposed to a push saw, which means that most of the cutting action happens on the pull rather than the push, which means that it's probably going to be much easier to operate for a weakling like me. That said, I do have no idea what maybe like a centimeter in diameter, and that's about what I'm going for, because I'm gonna cut them about like that long and then just shave a little bit off the side to carve the rune into. That's what we're gonna go with. And I'm gonna gather a few of these because I do want them at roughly uniform widths. Will go into oil infusions, and then the rest of them will go into burn bundles, and nothing will get wasted. And I'm just gonna sort this into like leaves and then the sorts of twigs that I could use for the runes. No bread did not bring, no drink from no spring, while I looked down below. I took up the secret. The deep mystery, the runes I did roll and fell from that tree that none can know. Burning wild roots, oh, hello. I'm cutting my runes, and I'm doing this out here. Sean helps me get set up with a spare board to cut on. He's clamped it to the table, and then we've got another clamp over here that's helping me clamp the juniper twigs to the board. And then I have my Japanese pole saw, and I've just been cutting them. I cut the first one by eye, and then since then I've kind of been cutting them up against each other. We've got 6 so far. Nice clean cut. I'm not concerned about every piece being exactly the same length. I'm just concerned about them being roughly similar when you're picking blindly. I love this piece has some lichen on it, and I'm liking it. I'm kind of hoping that'll stay. I can get another piece out of this if I can hold it still. Okay. I haven't decided if I'm gonna seal these or not when they're done. Yeah, no, my first ones are quite a bit. My first one's like almost a full centimeter shorter than my last one. So I'll measure my next ones from my first one. I don't know if these are gonna work, but I'm sure gonna find out the hard way. Gosh, darn it. That one just fell right through the deck. I'm just gonna chop up all the pieces that I have that are the right size, and then I will have the ability to make mistakes, and also I'll just be able to pick the best ones. Pretty good at just eyeballing this size. So I now have 30 pieces, 30 little staves that I could use to make runes. I'm sure I will mess some up. This is the one I wanted to show you earlier that has the lichen on it. Isn't that so pretty? It makes me want to leave them all natural with bark on. And this is the Odin that I whittled and wood burned. And this was back when I was like, I don't need to do blood magic. That's just, you know, magic's all in your imagination. You don't have to use blood. And like, I mean, you don't have to use blood. But I carved this guy, and as soon as I finished carving out his missing eye that he sacrificed to the well of Mimir, I stabbed my finger on accident, and now he has a blood-stained eye. Yeah, you know, if you don't give them what they want, sometimes they take what they want. That's what I learned. Anyhow, these are my rune tines, and I guess the next step is to shave some nice flat sides onto them and pick out which ones I want to try carving into. So as you can see, I've already gotten quite a bit done here. I am just using the whittling knife to trim off any like knots that are on the side that I'm gonna flatten. Not exactly like flatten, but I'm just making a nice carving surface on there. So trimming off the bark, and then also on the ends of the pieces, you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of rounding it off, just kind of whittling off the corners and giving it a nice rounded shape on the end. And here I'm trimming the other side. And yeah, the point is just to keep these looking still like natural wood pieces. They still want that echo of the tree in their memory, kind of in the bark on the back, and you know, in their shapes. That's important to me, but also, you know, making space for the carvings that are going to be here. So this is just kind of so you can see the difference between one where I rounded the ends and one where I didn't. You can see how nice that rounded end is. So here they are. I've whittled them all down into their final shapes, and you can see I've rounded all their ends, and I'm pretty darn happy with how they look at this point. Actually, the next thing is just to carve them. So I have carved them. I don't know if you can, how well you can see in this light. I know. Why were you not informed? I'm sorry. I tried. I have no usable footage of the actual carving of the runes. Like, what happened was I sat down and just to look at my beautiful pieces of wood, just to admire them, just to touch them, just to kind of feel them and feel their energy and sit with them. And then 30 minutes later, they were just there. The runes carved into the wood. And that's all well and good. And I have no regrets, because surely that was meant to happen. Surely the spirit just moved me, and they came out and threw me, and sure, fine, whatever, I accept. However, because I love you guys so much, I tried last night to film footage of me carving one of the like extra tines that I had cut, and I tried to carve a rune into one of them, and I learned something very important. And the thing that I learned is that it is much easier to carve fresh wet twigs, fresh wet wood, than to carve the dry wood 3 days later. I was able to get some very unimpressive, barely legible shapes cut out by ignoring everything that I've ever learned about knife safety, which I don't recommend. Please be safe when using knives. This video is not intended as a woodworking instructional or a blade safety guide. This is intended as a documentation of my magical experience of making my own runes. Please, 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 if you're going to do any of the things that I do in this video, use common sense, research basic safety, get supervision, have a buddy, be smart, be safe. I love you. You're valuable. We don't want you to be cut into pieces. We want you around. But yeah, so the rune cutting that I did 3 days later on the dry wood was nearly impossible, mostly illegible, and the footage that I got is basically unusable. So the lesson that we've learned is cut your runes into wet wood, or get better tools than I have, or just like be better at this than I am. But I'm pretty sure that just using fresh wet wood would be a really good idea. And you know, I did feel like, you know, my intuition pulled me in that direction, and I'm sitting here like apologizing for not having footage, but I'm also thinking about like why that might have happened, and like why my intuition might have been like, hey, carve them now, because I didn't know. I actually thought it'd be easier to carve dry wood, just because I figure people usually carve dry wood. That's the state that wood is usually in when it's carved, is dry. But that was a false assumption, because the wet wood was way easier to carve. But also there's something about the wood still being alive and still having essentially like the blood of the tree wet and running in its veins. And I'm really glad that I was able to imprint the runes into the wood while it was still essentially alive. I have to go to work in like 3 minutes. So if you do choose to pursue a similar project to this one yourself, I would absolutely recommend carving your runes into your wood the day that you harvest it. I've also heard other people say that a chisel can be better for carving the runes than a carving knife, and that might be true. I don't know. I didn't try it, so if you try it, you'll have to let me know. So I used the Sky by Elemental Tools to carve them. Same thing I used to strip one side of each one and to whittle down the ends. And I'm pretty happy. I think, you know, you can't really see what's going on, but that's why you stain them. So, yeah. Alright guys, that is it for the harvesting and carving of the runes. If you want to follow along with the staining process and the consecrating process and all the fun stuff that happens next, go on and hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell if you want to be alerted when the next video heads your way and comes to a screen near you. And thanks for being here, you know. I hope you got something out of this. Go ahead and leave a comment down below letting me know what kind of runes you use and why you chose them, and whether you like them or not, and why or why not. And if you've ever made your own set of runes, or if you decide to make your own set of runes, whether you do it like this or some other way, I want to know about it. I love talking about runes. Please reach out to me. You can reach me in the comments, or you can reach me through private message on Instagram. And we gonna jam out now.